everyone. Welcome back to the Analyst of Vajiram and Ravi. Through this discussion, you will learn good details about the current affair articles derived from the Hindu and Indian Express. So what are these articles? Let's have a look. The first one, we will dive deep into the conflict of Israel and Palestine, and through this we will learn how the emergence of Palestine happened. Then in the second one, we will break down the entire insurance sector of India from both prelims and mains point of view. Then we will dissect a geophysical phenomena which causes disaster and has caused heavy casualty in northeast of India currently. This is the landsliding event of India. Next is, we will learn about a very interesting case study where on one hand, the prisoners have got the right to be elected, but on the other hand, they do not have the right to vote. Then, in light of the deadly fire in Rajkot, Gujarat, we will learn about the nuances of fire regulation in India and how can we end without studying the Prelims Snippets, which are going to be extremely groundbreaking for the upcoming prelims examination. So, to learn more details, stay tuned. The context of our first topic is an interesting key development in the Israel-Gaza conflict, where recently Palestine has applied for renewed application for United Nations membership. So far now, it should be clear that while Palestine is an observer state, it is a non-member observer state of United Nations. Now, we'll be studying the entire history of the emergence of Palestine land and what led to the development of conflict between Israel and Palestine. So first of all, let me invite you to travel through the time about 1000 years back. In and around 1700 BC, there was a place which is known as Levant right now. This was known as the land of Canaan. The land of Canaan was very famous for being a place where the Judaism patriarchs, they started settling themselves, which means the forefathers of the Judaism religion, they primarily started establishing themselves over here in this land of Canaan. Now, what is the extent of Canaan? Canaan is West Bank, it is Syria, and it is Jordan. These three states that you know of today, they all comprised of this holy land called Canaan. This is the holy land of Judaism. Why? Because according to the Hebrew Bible, the God or the Abraham has promised these lands to the Jew people. So these are the promised lands to the Jew people, and therefore a lot of Jews who were preaching the Judaism religion, they started settling up over here. This region now came to be known as the place of Israel. Why is it known as Israel? Because Israel was the grandson of Abraham. Who is Abraham? Abraham is the founding father of these three religions, which is Christianity, of course Judaism, and Islam. And therefore, collectively all these three religions are known as Abrahamic religions. So our story will begin from this land of Canaan, which was historically known as Israel. And why is it known as Israel? You've understood. Now, because a lot of Jew people are establishing over there, definitely they will start consolidating political powers, and therefore calls for rise of monarchy or some kind of polity in this region. And therefore we will see that around 1000 BC, establishment of monarchy of Israel will start taking place with King Saul. So he will for the first time establish Israeli monarchy, and then followed up by a shepherd, King David, who is very prominently famous for developing the capital Jerusalem, the very conflicted area. So Jerusalem was developed by King David, and then came King Solomon, during whose reign the entire region saw its epic zenith, and therefore King Solomon built a lot of temples, did a lot of administrative activities, and tried to consolidate the entire empire to the best of his abilities. So during the time of King Solomon, can you see the extent of the empire? Can you see the Israeli kingdom over here? This is the entire Israel kingdom. But then what will happen? With the death of King Solomon, there will be a fallout of this consolidated empire, and therefore it will now get split into two divisions. The first division is the kingdom of Israel with a capital Samaria, and second, southwards, is the kingdom of Judah. Now please remember, this is the kingdom of Judah, the capital is still Jerusalem, but both of them will be ruled by different monarchies. Now, as you know, that split or disintegration of any consolidated empire will lead to attraction of a lot of attacks. Who will be the first to attack? The next mighty empire in the neighborhood, which is the Roman Empire. Roman Empire ruling around the Mediterranean region, they will start attacking this region, and this will lead to introduction of the second religion for the first time, which is Christianity, which will come with the Roman Empire attack. So now the Roman attack will happen, and they will capture this region of Judah, and they will replace it with a Christian name, which is Palestine. So from here onwards, you will for the first time see the emergence of name Palestine. So the kingdom of Judah is now named as Kingdom of Palestine. Then comes the Arab conquest. So after the fallout of the Roman Empire, now you will see the Ottoman Empire. In fact, previous to that, you will see a lot of Arab conquest in this region. They are again attracted by the fact that they wanted to capture Jerusalem, which is a common hub for the three religions. As I have already told you, they are Abrahamic religion. So now they will come to Jerusalem. The Arabs will come to Jerusalem, and they will establish a dome of rock in the place of a Jewish temple by demolishing it, and therefore officially and religiously capturing the area of Jerusalem. Now this will lead to establishment of third religion. So now you see, the first to come were the Judah people, the second to come were the Christian people, the third to come were the Islamic people. All of them have now came into this land of Canaan. Okay, now as a result of this, it will cause a lot of prosecution. The Arabs will naturally compete over their resources, cause a lot of wars, and definitely prosecution of the Jew people, and they will evict them out of the land. And therefore, you will see that the Seljuk Turks, who were conquesting that region, they led to large-scale massacre of the Jew people who start fleeing off to the other lands, for example, the Middle East and the Europe. And from here onwards, will start the introduction of Jew people into the lands of Europe. Now, with the fall down of the Seljuk Turks, starts the next Game of Thrones with the establishment of a mighty empire, which we famously know as the Ottoman Empire, which predominantly conquered the regions all around the Mediterranean and also largely around the Arabian Peninsula. A very mighty empire who also engulfed the entire region of Palestine and Israel into their hand. So naturally, now this region is dominated by the Arabs, which will lead to large-scale persecution of the Jews, which was previously going on itself. Where did these Jews resort their habitat? They started moving towards safer places like the Middle East, like some European nations, for example, Serbia and Russia. Over there, they started consolidating themselves into a group. And this movement was known as the Zionism movement. This was meant to snatch back their holy land from the Arab people, from the Ottoman Empire. So, it was led by Theodor Herzl, and the idea of his was that the rich Jews will go in this area of Israel and they will start purchasing the land, and eventually they will start colonizing the poor Jews from European regions in these lands. So this will lead to large-scale colonization, and this was a tactic played via the Theodor Herzl in the Zionism movement. So please remember this movement as well. Now, Ottoman Empire was very mighty, but it had another mighty opponent, which was the British Empire. So both of them fought with each other in which war? The First World War. And what was the result? Ottoman Empire fell down and the entire land of Israel got into the hand of British. And therefore, they divided it into two zones. The first zone was the French zone. The second zone was the British zone. Since the Israel entirely came under British zone, they now started calling it the British Mandate of Palestine, which means the Palestine has now got colonized. It has now got colonized. But can you see, because of movement of Zionism, a lot of Jews have started coming over here, and at the same time a lot of Arab population is also living, and both of them don't like each other. So therefore, in order to appease the Jews, why Jews? Because Jews are heavily contributing in the industrial revolution of UK economy, of European economy. So they want to appease the Jews, but at the same time they want to appease the Arabs, and they want to wet both these communities against each other, which is a typical British policy. So in order to pursue this divide and rule, what the British will do? They will call for a very groundbreaking declaration. This is the Balfour Declaration. This, for the first time, promised the Jews to establish their national home in the British Mandate of Palestine, which means now they will be officially permitted to, or they will be officially allowed the immigrant passes and also the residence passes to establish themselves in the land of Palestine. So now this will escalate naturally the tension between the Jews and the people who were living over there, that is the Arabs. So now comes another era of massive persecution of Jews who were living especially in Germany. Why? Because Hitler came, and Hitler was of this theory that I want racial purism. So I want to evict prosecute, and even he led to holocaust of many Jew people who started, in order to save their lives, started running towards their holy land. So now this caused massive influx of the Jew immigrants. Now this alarmed the British because of course it will escalate tensions, and it will also cause the entire situation to become very, very volatile and out of control. So finally, after the Second World War, the British started to withdraw out of this land because they understood that this is not in our hand, and just how they did with us, with India, that when they realized that we are losing this game, they divided us into two dominions. Similarly, they will do for the Palestine region as well, and they will take this entire case and give it to the hands of United Nations for it to consider and handle it. Now, when the United Nations come in 1947, it will propose a two-state solution. This is a question asked in prelims also. Two-state solution proposes that people who are living in this area of British Mandate of Palestine will now be divided into two groups. First of all, into two areas, that is, first of all, the Jewish land of Israel, and second is the Arab state of Palestine. This is for the first time Israel was given an official status by the United Nations, and it was considered as one among the members of United Nations, but Palestine was not considered as a member back then. Jerusalem, which was a heavily contested zone, this was declared as an international zone under the hands of United Nations, and this entire plan of division, as you can see, this was the entire bone of contention. Why? Because less than 1/3 of the population, which was of the Jew community, they were given more than 56% of the land parcel of this entire Palestine region. It was not liked by the Arab people. So they naturally started forming themselves into a lot of militias, and this Arab militia will now grow into a lot of bloodshed wars. For example, there was Arab-Israeli war, there was a 6-day war, very important one, there were some intifadas of course, and this eventually got finalized into one conclusion that we see today. We see this entire area being divided into two states, that is, first of all, Israel, which is a recognized country, and second one is Palestine, limited to the West Bank and limited to the Gaza Strip. And so the militant group of this Gaza region, they always contested themselves against the Israel. This is the Negev desert, geographically very important. Through this, there is a proposal of passing the Ben Gurion Canal in order to bypass the Suez Canal dependency. This is a little bit of geography information, but coming back to the main point. Right now, we have to understand that Palestine is asking for a full-time membership from the United Nations. You must know that it has already got the observer state in 2012. You should also know how many members are there of United Nations. Just write it down in the comment, how many members are there of United Nations. Then, out of them, Palestine and the Holy See, they are non-member observer nations. And which are the non-member, non-observer nations? These are Taiwan, because it's still not considered as a different part of China, and second is Kosovo. It's still considered as a part of Serbia. So therefore, both of them are not having any observer status, neither having any member status. Now, for your information, how does a state becomes a member of the United Nations? First of all, it has to send some application. This application is sent to United Nations Secretary General, after which it is sent to Security Council. Therefore, US is a very big roadblock because it doesn't want Palestine to get a different status, a different member status. So therefore, it has got veto power, and in order to be passed by the United Nations Security Council, it should have 9 affirmative votes in total, consisting of permanent and non-permanent members. At the same time, it should not have any veto. Therefore, it is a problem from the side of Palestine to get the membership entirely. And second, after the proposal, after it gets passed from United Nations Security Council, it then passes through General Assembly, who votes on this process, and finally the membership becomes active. Right? So this was all about the discussion on the emergence of Palestine and what is the process of it getting the membership of United Nations. Now, in the second topic, we will holistically read about the insurance sector of India. What brings us to this context is the fact that LIC is set to enter into the health insurance sector, which might make you ask a question that was it not already working in the health domain? Well, the answer would be found in the following analysis, where I will tell you, first of all, the insurance products of India, and not just India, insurance products overall are divided into two groups. One is the life insurance, second is the non-life insurance. The life insurance and the non-life insurance, which might include insurance of your credits, or of your deposits, or of the agriculture, or of your health services. So these are the non-life insurance. Now, what was the progression and what was the history of insurance in India? So when the British came, they started for the first time an Oriental life insurance company, but for themselves, not for us. So this was not for Indians. The first to be created by Indians and for Indians was in 1870, named as the Bombay Mutual Life Insurance. Now, this fact as such is not very important, but you must know that with the independent India, we saw a lot of scattered insurance companies. Most of them were private in nature and they needed regulations. So, now comes nationalization. So, nationalization policy of the entire insurance sector, rather the life insurance sector, came with 1956 Act of LIC nationalization. So in 1956, the birth of LIC will happen, and this will see consolidation of about 256 previously working private insurance companies of India, all consolidated into one, all nationalized and regulated by government. But this was about the life insurance sector. What about the general and the non-life insurance sector? Well, that also got nationalized, but gradually. So in 1972, the general life insurance saw the birth and also saw the nationalization of the same. Now, as we have seen that both the spaces have got nationalized, which means a lot of government intervention must have started. This must have also stifled a lot of innovation, competitiveness, hindered by bureaucratization, red tapeism, etc. Right? So therefore, now the government will feel the need of enhancing privatization to have more private products in insurance, because the population was also enhancing, the problems were also enhancing. So now, as we have seen, nationalization of both the genres have happened. Next we will see institutionalization to check, to have a control of these growing sectors. So now government also started liberalizing some of the private players with the 1999 regime, the LPG reforms. And as a result, government felt the need to regulate it better with the help of an authority. This authority was IRDAI, which is Insurance Regulatory Development Authority of India, established in the year 1999 via a statutory act. So therefore, an institution was set in place to take care of both the genres of insurance in the country. Now, with this also calls a need of inviting more private players. How will you do this? By liberalizing your FDI policies. Initially, it was 26% under the automatic route, and now it is 74% under the automatic route. But you can also see in the PDF that 100% is written. What is it for? So 100% FDI under automatic route is allowed for whom? For the insurance intermediaries. Insurance intermediaries are not the insurance companies. They are not the insurance buyers. They are people in between them, what we call as the insurance brokers. So for them, 100% FDI has been allowed by the government of India. So this is how we have liberalized and called for invitation of a lot of private players. Now, therefore, India's insurance market, which was lagging behind the global average a lot before the last decade or during the last decade, has saw exponential growth. In fact, it has saw one of the highest market growth. In terms of the growth rate, 11% has been achieved so far. As you can see, the insurance penetration, though the two factors of insurance penetration and insurance densities are lagging behind, still we have managed to garner about 11% growth in them, which is highest in the world. This also makes us the 10th largest insurance market of the world, and if we keep up with the pace of 11%, we might become 6th largest insurance economy in the entire world by 2030. Now, as you can see that there are two challenges of insurance penetration and challenges of insurance density. So what are these two terms? First of all, what is insurance penetration? So let's say I am a customer of the insurance policy and I have purchased a premium, something which I have committed to. Now, me along with all the policy holders will be having certain premiums, which I can call it as the total premium of my nation. This, when I divide it with the total GDP of my nation, I will get what is known as insurance penetration, which means out of the total money my nation holds, how much of it has been utilized for insuring the life and the general purposes. The second term is insurance density. Now, you must have guessed it right, that this is the total premium subscribed in my country upon the total population. upon the total population, this is the insurance density, and India is lagging behind in both these things. What is the reason behind it? These are the certain challenges enlisted before you. So first of all is the lack of awareness and the education. Many people, in fact some of our age also, do not know a lot about the insurance and the need of insurance in the first place. Many think that it's a waste of time, it's a waste of money itself. So now, because of this, they are not very incentivized, they are not very attracted towards the insurance products. This is also attributed to other factors. For example, some mis-selling, some fraudulent practices that have been previously performed. For example, over-promising and under-delivering by the insurance companies, exploitative practices, high claim but very high rejection rates as well. So all of these things have de-incentivized the people, especially of India, especially living in the rural background. So one more challenge is there, very limited reach in the rural area, which are only struggling with their basic standard of living. How can they start insurance policies? So these are the challenges why we see low insurance penetration and low insurance density. And also lack of product innovation, because if you assess the policies around you, it will be more or less the same. So what is the need of the hour? To have more competition. And also governmental intervention so that these insurance become more readily available and also accessible and not cheaper. Now, when it comes to the policy interventions that have already been made by the government, we have already institutionalized the entire structure by setting up of IRDAI. Next is, we have already increased the FDI limits. We've got more potential, but about 74% has been liberalized. Next is, IRDAI already has a vision for having assurance for all the population by 2047, and it will be realizing using this three trinity. First of all is to have a comprehensive platform, a single window which will be providing all the products available in the market with regards to insurance. So recently, Sugam Bima portal was launched, and this was one among the targeted trinity by IRDAI under this vision. Second is to promote the outreach by enhancing the awareness. This is by the Bima Vistar program, and this will provide a single policy which will be ensuring not only the life aspects but the general aspects like agriculture, credit, deposits, etc. Next is Bima Vahaks. This is moreover for rural transformation, inclusion of rural people in this particular market, and for this, women-centric workforce will be created known as Bima Vahinis, and they will be facilitating the involvement of rural people in the insurance markets. The next is, government has already resorted to a very inclusive approach by putting up insurance across many sectors. For example, for health, we have Pradhan Mantri Jan Arogya Yojana. For agriculture, we have got Pradhan Mantri Fasal Bima Yojana. For other aspects of health, for elderly people, etc., we have got the following schemes. So with the help of this, we will be finally able to achieve our dream of what? Of attaining the 6th largest space, in fact, better than this, by the year 2030. So please remember these policy interventions, the challenges we read, and what are the chronology of insurance development in India. And now we will dissect the landslides anatomy, because in Northeast, heavy rains caused by cyclone triggered landslides causing heavy casualties. You have already read about the cyclone Rainal in the previous Analyst, so I'm not going to talk about it. We are going to talk about this phenomena. This is landslide. It's concerning to two parts of the syllabus, and also please understand, landslides are one of the most concerning disasters which have far-reaching consequences for the country, and therefore it's very important for both examination point of view and for general knowledge point of view that we must be having awareness of the same. Now, landslides are a type of hazards characterized by mass wasting. This is basically a drastic downward movement of a form of debris or mass, which could be rock, which could be earth, which could be soil, which could be mud. And on the basis of this material, again, it can be divided into multiple classifications. So this downward movement happens because of the natural action of gravity, which is trying to pull everything towards itself. So therefore, this is a very natural hazard which most often than not takes place in the areas having slope or some kind of elevations. So this is the landslides. Now there are multiple classifications. First of all, on the basis of speed. So on the basis of decreasing speed on the trend of decreasing speed, it can be classified as a debris flow where rapid mass movement happens. Second is earth flow, mud flow, where viscous flow of mud happens, so therefore the speed also gradually decreases. This is less hazardous as compared to debris flow. Next is creep flow, which is very, very slow and steady. Now, depending upon the type of the movement, it could be rotational, it could be transverse movement, or it could be topple movement. So let's say, for example, this is a hill and this is a waterfall falling. So let's say the waterfall, because of its hydraulic action, has pulled up this entire rock. This is known as a fall. Okay, here entire rock or debris is falling off. This is very disastrous. Second is the movement of the silted material along the slope, and this is known as slides. The slides can be in the form of rotational slide, can take a form of transitional slide. Next is topple. Topple is when, let's say, a particular rock has fall off along the slope and suddenly the slope break off. Because of the breaking of the slope, this will topple or this will jump. So this is known as the topple kind of landslide. So there are multiple types of landslides. For better details, you can always visit the handout which is available in the description box. Now, what is the vulnerability of the India and specifically of the Northeast? As you can see the map that has been created by NDMA, so it showcases that there are 3 regions which are highly prone to the landslides in India, of course having hills. This is the Western Ghat, the Himalayan regions, and the Himalayan region of northern India. Now, the northeastern India is having vulnerability up to 65 or up to 60%. The next 25% vulnerable is your Himalayan region, the northwest Himalayan region, and about 50% vulnerability is of the Western Ghats. So of course you can see the highest losses will happen in the northeastern region, which are already very ecologically fragile. The reasons could be natural and anthropogenic reasons. Anthropogenic, for example, reckless development, mining, quarrying, and some of the other reasons could be high seismicity, because this is a zone where the two plates are converging, as we have already taught you. Next is the rocks over there are kind of sedimentary rocks, are kind of marine rocks from the previously existing Tethys Sea. So these are sedimentary in nature, very fragile again. So very, very erodible. Next is some of the anthropogenic factors, as I've already told you. So basically we have analyzed what is the national landslide susceptibility of India, which you can incorporate in your mains answer writing. Now, what are the preventive measures, which is the main thing we need to know? So first of all, in order to take preventions, government already has got National Disaster Management Act of 2005, which has created the National Disaster Management Authority, which has created the landslide related hazard strategic planning. It has created a planning. It has also created guidelines on the management of such hazard, and it has also created a National Landslide Disaster Management Institute in India. Okay, so these are some of the steps taken up by the government, but the other innovations that we need are coming. Let's say in the Western Ghat, current affair, we have read that they are using the slope reinforcement techniques, some of the geoengineering techniques, for example, soil nailing, where insertion of reinforcing elements, for example, iron nails are done into the planes, into the slope, so that the soil remain or the debris or the rock remain intact. Next is the netting of the same. Next is hydroseeding. So by establishing vegetation covers, the root will be able to grasp and provide stability to the slope better, right? So therefore hydroseeding, where this is a process of applying a mixture of seed, fertilizer, basically everything which is suiting the growth of a crop, the growth of a plant basically, and the roots of which will intact the slope. Next is creation of retaining walls, creation of terrace farming, and in fact terracing should be done even if farming is not done. Second is so that the slope breaks off. Next is chemical stabilization, using some of the chemicals like concretes. These advanced methods can also be utilized along with community participation. So then, what is the way forward? First of all, we need to have a thorough assessment of the plains in which we are going to develop the things. For example, carrying capacity of the mountain should be assessed. Carrying capacity of Deccan mountains are more as compared to that of the Himalayan mountains, right? Because of the different nature of the rock, more fragile environment of the Himalayan region, and therefore development should be very much controlled. It should be strategic, it should be sustainable. Next is need for building resilience. This is a kind of hazard, a kind of disaster which is non-negotiable because it has got a multi-hazard effect, which means, let's say there is heavy rainfall, let's say there's a cyclone in some part of the country. Now this cyclone can trigger heavy rainfall, or let's say because of excessive warming, or let's say this rainfall has both caused glacial lake outburst flow, and this can again trigger landslide. So can you see that once one particular hazard has cascaded into so many hazards, finally leading into landslide. So there's no one point of origin of landslide event, right? And therefore, what we require is finally to build the resilience of the community. And finally, to have a landscape zonation and landscape based management. And it should not be restricted to the district plan. And it should not be just restricted to a district plan or a state plan together. Okay, then in the next topic, we will read about a prisoner's electoral right. What recently has happened is Amritpal Singh, who has been jailed because of pro-Khalistan activities of his, he has announced his intention to contest the Lok Sabha election from Punjab's constituency. Is it even possible? Well, yes, it is. Why is it possible? For that, we'll understand and analyze two different rights of any citizen in India. First of all, the right to vote, and second, the right to be elected. When it comes to right to vote, it is intrinsically given under Article 326 of the Constitution, which provides us a constitutional backing. So, which means right to vote is our constitutional right. This has also been considered correct by the UPSC Prelims examiner. Now, Article 326 says that this is our constitutional right to give the vote. But it is also a statutory right. In fact, before becoming a constitutional right, it's a statutory right. This was enlisted by the Kuldeep Nair versus Union of India Supreme Court judgment, in which it said this is a statutory right, not a fundamental right, which means it is subjected to statutory restrictions. So you cannot go to the court if you have been impinged, your right to vote has been impinged because of certain grounds. Why? Because you cannot debate it, or you cannot make it across the table with the right to equality. So therefore, a section 62, Clause 5 was introduced under the Representations of People Act 1954, which said that people who are under custody, people who are convicted of an offence, or even who are under trial, even if they have got their names in the electoral roll of the constituency, still they will not be able to exercise their right to vote. So they will not be able to vote. But one exception is there, which you must be mindful of. This is regarding the preventive detainees. So the people who are under preventive detention, they can file their votes via postal ballot system. This is very important from prelims point of view, so be mindful of the fact. Now let's jump on to another thing. What is the right to be elected? Now each one of us has got the right to be elected if we have the rightful qualifications that are given under the Representations of People Act and by the Constitution of India. But the right to be elected can also be restricted under Section 8 of Representation of People Act 1951. But here is the caveat. It says that it bars the prisoners against contesting the elections only after their conviction. So which means the under trials, which means the people who have not been declared guilty or convicted yet, they can still have exercised their right to be elected, right? Next is 6-year disqualification period has to be observed from the date of release. Now, there are certain exceptions and caveat to this section, which comes in the form of Election Commission of India power to modify the disqualification period. This was given under Section 11 of the Representation of People Act, which said that if Election Commission of India wants, it can reduce this disqualification period of 6 years. And if it can reduce, it can also nullify it. So therefore, it was seen in the case of Sikkim's Chief Minister, Prem Singh Tamang, who was under conviction and who was under prison for 1 year. When he got released, he immediately contested the by-election and even won the election. Why? Because of this leeway given by Election Commission of India. Second is the power exercised by the apex or the Supreme Court, which has the power to stay the conviction. Let's say an MP or MLA has been disqualified and is rendering some imprisonment or conviction. But Supreme Court comes in, kinds of stays this conviction. This staying of the conviction will amount to disqualification or removal of the disqualification provision. And therefore, now they will be rendered as eligible to again contest the elections. So this is the caveat which you need to know, and therefore, the prisoners, though they do not have the right to vote, they do have the right to elected under certain conditions. Can we now practice a PYQ? First of all, when a prisoner makes out a sufficient case, parole cannot be denied to such prisoner because it becomes a matter of his or her right. Parole is not a right, it is a privilege. This statement is incorrect. Second is that the state governments have their own prisoners released on parole rule. This is correct because prison, it comes under state government. So the correct answer over here is statement number 2. In the next one, we will read about the fire safety regulation in India because lapses in the same have claimed lives of many people in the Rajkot district of Gujarat. So it all begins. We are getting our fire safety regulations, first of all, from the center. Okay. So center, though it cannot enact any act. Why? Because the fire safety is under the domain of state list, state subject. But center, of course, has mentioned certain guidelines, which initially came in the form of National Building Code. This National Building Code is basically the prima facie standard, central standard for fire safety. Basically, how to have construction, how to do maintenance, and how to ensure fire safety. Again, a model code has been published by the central government in the form of bylaws of 2016, which guides the state and the urban areas to create safer environment, safer infrastructure. Next is Disaster Management Authority, which also provides guideline on the same. Now, it's on the state government to implement these bylaws, to implement these models, to implement these codes and the guidelines given by NDMA. And each state government takes it differently. So there is no uniformity of the laws that are taken up by state government. But anyway, state governments have the responsibility of incorporating the National Building Code and also incorporating the recommendations of including the bylaws. Why? Because the fire services are a state subject, a very important fact for prelims exam. When I'm talking about the National Building Code, it's a very holistic code which need not to be mandatorily followed, but it is one of the structural guidelines which has to be followed while making any law. So anyway, it includes the following things which you can read from the handout, not very important, but this is just to safeguard a building from fire. Now, what are the challenges associated? As you can see, there is fragmentation, non-uniformization. Why? Because it's a state subject and they have to follow a code. And how we assimilate into our laws. So first of all, the National Building Code is just a recommendatory document, which makes it very easy for the state government to escape it. And therefore, there are no proper audits. Audits are highly underutilized, not properly done, which causes many security lapses. Second is failure of the local body to conduct regular checks and enforce compliance. And that is why cases like this can be seen. And last but not the least, we have been short on staff and finances since a long period of time. So this is same with this incident as well, be it railway safety issues, fire safety issues, anywhere. Is this because shortage of staff, rather experienced staff, proactive staff, responsible staff, accountable staff, and also the lack of finances to manage all of this, right? What can we do about it? We can take case studies or best practices from one of the best performing states, which is Singapore. Singapore is the safest country in the world with regards to fire safety. What are the things that they are doing well? First of all, they have a uniform and strong legislation. Second, there is a very strict adherence and monitoring and compliance mechanism. Second, they have very effective response plans. In India, we do not have fire response plans specifically, which is uniform across all the districts and states and villages. That is one of the issues which Singapore is doing better. Next is we need a global approach for the same, and good news about it is in 2024 only about 50 countries have came together in Washington DC to commemorate one of the first World Fire Congress in order to have international collaboration regarding fire hazards, because it takes toll on more than 66,000 lives on an annual basis in India. Now let me quickly take you through the prelim snippets, very important for the examination. First is microcephaly, then qualified institutional placement, then what is Pravah portal and who has launched it, and what is I4C. So the first term in news is microcephaly. This was covered in the science section of the Hindu. So microcephaly is a kind of rare disease which hinders the growth of brain from the childhood. So as you can see, the development across the age of the brain, it gets halted during the childhood phases only. So therefore, microcephaly can be broken down into two words. Micro means small and cephaly means headed. You must have also heard about encephalitis. So cephal eventually means head only. So this is small headedness. This is a rare disease having many causation factors. One of the main causation factors attributed to it is a Zika virus disease prominent in Africa. So Zika virus, which is called no cure, no vaccine, is one of the prominent cases as the mothers, pregnant mothers suffering from Zika developed the microcephaly children. So Zika virus can be caused by Aedes aegypti mosquito. Can you tell me the other disease caused by Aedes aegypti? This is chikungunya, this is dengue, this is yellow fever, this is Zika virus, and this is lymphatic filariasis. So please remember, which mosquito causes malaria? Kindly write it down in the comment section. Fine. This is not the only disease. Sometimes genetic mutation due to exposure of nuclear substances. For example, when Hiroshima blast happened in Japan, then also the mothers developed a kind of mutation which got inherited into their children, and they developed microcephaly. So mutations can be a reason. Infections like HIV, herpes can be a reason. Exposure to toxic chemicals, for example, contaminants like uranium, arsenic, etc. can happen. Next is severe malnutrition and injuries to the brain. For example, hypoxia, which is generally seen when during the last trimesters, and then the trauma, which can happen to both the mother and the child. All of them can also lead to hampered cognitive abilities, and more so, hampered development of the size of the brain. This is microcephaly. Next is qualified institutional placement, because recently Adani Enterprises have issued them and collected a lot of capital from it, because it's an easy way. Generally, we issue IPOs and we issue FPOs, but this is a more lengthier way. Why? Because in order to issue them, we first have to showcase our documents, our verification documents in front of the market regulator SEBI. But if we want to bypass this process and we directly want to list our documents, list our basically a kind of IP or QPI directly onto the market, in that case, we can issue a flexible option, which is qualified institutional placement. As the name suggests, this is not available for citizens. This is only available, and this can only be brought by institutions or by institutionalized or qualified institutional buyers. So only QIBs, qualified institutional buyers, can buy it, and not individuals like you and me. So of course, this is a fast way. It's a much cheaper and faster way as compared to IPO and FPO. And these are basically issued to reduce our reliance on the foreign capital. So that we can attract more national capital, right? Next is Prabha portal. RBI recently has came up with 3 innovative products. One is the Prabha portal, a web-based portal to seek authorization. Second is direct mobile app to provide retail investors access to government securities and their transactions. Second is a repository of information on the Indian fintech firm. The name of both of them are not out yet, but these are very innovative products of RBI, very important for the exam. So we'll be putting our focus on Prabha portal. Prabha, as the name suggests, streamlining a process. So let's say you want to have a regulatory approval from the RBI. In that case, you can log into this newly designed web portal Prabha. Via this, there will be a seamless and streamlined access, or basically approvals or clearances that will be granted by the RBI, and this will improve the overall organizational efficiency. Next is the I4C, which is Indian Cyber Crime Coordination Center. Please remember, this is by Ministry of Home Affairs, even though it is dealing with cybercrime, which is generally dealt by the Ministry of Electronics and IT. This one is by Home Affairs. This is located in New Delhi, and this is one of the primary organizations to combat cyber crime in the country, basically by ensuring coordination among the multiple agencies that are working for cyber crime. It could be Ministry of Home Affairs, it could be Ministry of Information and Electronics, it could be other ministry, some department of ISRO. All of them can be collaborated in one place with the help of this coordination center, which was in news because of an explained section of Indian Express. So I hope you enjoyed the session today. Thank you so much and have a great day.